you briefly first say, I was chuckling when you said Senator Kaine acquitted himself well, because you said he only acquitted himself well while he was praising the administration. I think Senator Kaine was acquitting himself well in his totality of his presentation, so that's why I was chuckling. And I would just note for the record that several members of this committee on both sides of the aisle, including myself, have a resolution recognizing the historic and important significance of the UAE-Bahrain agreement. So it's not that we're not prone, because it's election time, not to recognize that which is. But as someone who's been working on Iran since I was in the House of Representatives when no one was paying attention to Iran, and I would say, well, why are you not paying attention to Iran, a country that has huge oil and natural gas reserves and is seeking nuclear power for what? Not because it needs it for nuclear domestic energy, but for it's designed for nuclear weapons. I've called it as I've seen it, including in the last administration when I had strong disagreements. But that's not going to stop me now from having, when I believe, strong disagreements with this administration. So let me turn to a couple of questions I have in that regard. Special Representative Abrams, and maybe you can just give me a couple of quick yes or no's on these. Do you agree that over the past 2 years, Iran has moved closer to developing a nuclear weapon?
I would say they have moved a little bit closer in the sense that they've got more fissile material.
No, that's what I was going to get to. Has Iran increased its stockpile of low-enriched uranium?
Yes.
Has it increased its enrichment capacity?
Yes.
Okay. So is Iran's breakdown time, meaning the time Iran needs to produce enough weapon-grade uranium for a nuclear weapon, significantly shorter than it was in 2018?
I don't know if I'd say it was significantly shorter.
Is it shorter?
In principle, it has to be shorter.
Yeah. So those are all critical elements of when we're considering how Iran is doing vis-a-vis our policy in terms of achieving the ultimate goal. Let me turn to Secretary Hale. I know we've been calling you ambassador, which you will have for life, but right now you are the secretary, so you deserve that title. I want to pick off on Senator Young's comments about Turkey and your response. When Turkey ultimately intercedes in the internationally recognized territorial waters of the Republic of Cyprus, a member of the European Union, is it promoting peace and stability in the region?
We've called that out. We definitely are seeking to de-escalate the situation in the Eastern Mediterranean, working with the French and others. Secretary of State was in Cyprus recently. So we are working. It is very problematic, and we're working to de-escalate.
Yeah. And the only person the only country who's interceding in their international waters is Turkey. I mean, I love how we call on both sides. Well, one side's not doing anything. Same thing in Greece. Is Turkey promoting peace and stability when it intercedes in the territorial waters?
No, I didn't mean to suggest we're calling on all sides. What Turkey's doing is problematic, and we are trying to bring about de-escalation.
Same thing in Greece. Is that not true?
Yes, that's correct.
Territorial. And when Turkey seeks to have Halkbank not be sanctioned under U.S. law, that's not promoting the national interests of the United States under U.S. law?
No.
And when Turkey is supporting the side in Yemen, which we totally do not recognize, it's not creating peace and stability. So I appreciate our aspirations of what Turkey was, but it is not the realities under Erdogan. And I think on that, the chairman and I would agree. Let me ask you two final quick questions. In the wake of the devastating explosion in Beirut, I was pleased that the chairman and I introduced a bipartisan resolution in support of U.S. relief efforts and continued engagement with the Lebanese people and the international community to hold those responsible accountable. What more can the U.S. do to support those voices and actors in Lebanon who have proven to be good interlocutors?
Well, we meet with them, which is important because it demonstrates that they have a legitimate voice in the country, and we encourage them. We have trained many of their cadres on how to organize as NGOs. There's a lot going on at the grassroots level. We also engage the elite leadership of the country, many of whom are feeling on the defensive, and finding out what they're planning to do to turn the situation around. I'm struck, frankly, during my visit there by how much Hezbollah is also suffering as a consequence of this. They are caught up in the same pool of people on the public level demanding that Hezbollah as well disarm, that they stop their own corrupt practices. They're at the center of this problem, and we strongly endorse that view as well. We think that continued focus on reform is the right way. And, you know, when I went out and met with some of the demonstrators and activists, they shouted to me, "No bailout. Do not bail out this government." And I said, "We agree. We will provide humanitarian relief. We thank you for your support here in the Senate for that. But we have to be tough and make sure that our broader assistance is conditional on fundamental change."
I hope we can continue to make sure that our assistance goes to supporting and empowering people working on behalf of all of the Lebanese people. And then finally, I know that you're familiar with the U.S.-Sudan Claims Agreement and the legislation that the State Department is asking Congress to pass to implement that international agreement. Let me be clear, Sudan is at a very fragile moment, and I have consistently indicated for more than a year that the administration should do much more to support the fledgling democracy than it has done. I support a Sudan claims deal, but I also believe this deal falls short, and I have some questions about how the administration, whether or not it has a commitment to make it better. The legislation the State Department is seeking refers to, quote, fairness for U.S. victims. But is it fair that the State Department left 9/11 families completely out in the cold in the Sudan negotiations? Is it fair that you intentionally excluded their claims from the Sudan deal? You conveniently did not share that fact with Congress. And then you pushed Congress to pass legislation that would have completely terminated all 9/11 claims against Sudan. So I want to hear from you. That doesn't strike me as a fair deal. It's a slap in the face to our fellow citizens who lost loved ones in 9/11. So speak to me about this concept of fairness that you seem to have, not you personally, but the State Department.
Well, the agreement addresses the existing claims from victims of the Cole bombing and the embassy bombings that occurred in East Africa. Those claims are longstanding. They have been through the court system, and we believe that this deal offers a fair basis, as do the victims themselves, who have essentially accepted the deal. Subsequent to all this, there was the introduction of the possibility of 9/11 claimants, and during the last round of negotiations on the continuing resolution, the administration did send a letter up to the Hill, and we were prepared to offer compromises that would have, we think, provided a high level of protection for any future claims of 9/11 victims against Sudan that achieved status in a U.S. court. I'd be happy to. I don't have the specifics in front of me. It's very legalistic language. I'd be happy to get that to you right away this morning.
It is very legalistic, and I'm familiar with it. Let me just say I will oppose any Sudan legislation that fails to preserve and protect the 9/11 claims, to make sure that 9/11 families are not stomped upon by the administration. And I hope the State Department will reluctantly come along. I have not seen the text. Congress has not seen the text of the U.S.-Sudan agreement. Can you commit to sharing the text of the agreement with Congress by the end of the week?
Well, we sent a letter that described the nature of the agreement. I will go back to our legal advisor's office. I don't know that we have in fact, I'm confident we've not finalized the agreement itself, so we don't have anything yet to share. But we did describe in some detail the essential elements of the agreement.
Well, you can't ask Congress, Mr. Secretary. It's like playing games here. You can't ask Congress to pass implementing legislation for an international agreement, basically asking us to sign on the dotted line, yet you won't let us see the agreement. That's absurd. So I'm not going to sign on to something that I can't even see. So until we get to that point, count me out. And I think we may bring others along with us. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just jump in for 1 second, just to respond to something that Senator Menendez said, in, of course, correctly reminding us of your own comments about the Iranian nuclear program decades ago. Those comments, those judgments are still exactly correct. They're still behaving like a country that's looking for a nuclear weapon and has something to hide, even in 2020. You know, the IAEA asked for access to 2 sites in January. It took 7 months to get access to 1 site. The IAEA has reported this year that it visited 3 sites that were clearly sanitized. We have the archive discovered by the Israelis that shows that they kept intact everything they had done on the development of a nuclear weapon and the team that had done it under the same leadership. So that same problem does exist now, decades later.
We don't disagree.
Thank you, and let me also